iPads, iPhones, and smartphones are great until you drop them. If you need repairs, where do you go? Yakety Yak Wireless. Yakety Yak is a full-service wireless repair and sales center located just off Highway 121 in Colleyville. Our experienced technicians can fix almost any problem with your device: cracked screens, battery issues, water damage, and more. Have an old cell phone you don't need? Want to buy a used phone? Yakety Yak has over 500 used phones in stock and pays top dollar for your phone. Visit Yakety Yak Wireless today.
So today we're going to repair an iPad Air, and this is actually a GSM or LTE version, so you can kind of see exactly what it goes into when Yakety Yak Wireless repairs one of these. This is an actual customer unit. It's not one that's been taken apart 100 times. This one's actually never been repaired before. So the first thing we're going to do is check it to make sure everything works and then turn it off. You can see by the band up top that it's actually a LTE version and not just a regular Wi-Fi. This is our replacement screen that we got. It doesn't come with a home button. You reuse the home button. Make sure it has 2 digitizer cables on it. The other thing we do is we lay our own adhesive. We don't like the adhesive that comes on a lot of these screens. Some of the tools, make sure you blow off ESD safe tweezers, a Phillips head screwdriver, a thin metal spudger, some guitar picks, as well as a scraping spudger. You're also going to need either a heat gun, or in case of us, we use a actual hot plate that we heat to 65 degrees Celsius. Don't go any hotter or you'll trip the damage sensors on the iPad. We do use a variable rate heat gun that we also take to 65 degrees Celsius. And if you don't have a hot plate, you're going to have to use a lot of heat gun and a lot of patience. The hot plate makes it the easiest. So we've preheated our hot plate. We're actually going to leave the iPad on it for about 5 minutes. That will heat it up. We heat from the bottom through the iPad. It won't trip any sensors and it doesn't damage the iPad in the least. When we go to remove the screen, there's areas to watch for. Along the top, because this is a LTE version, are the antennas. Down along the right side is where it connects, unlike the iPad 2, 3, and 4, which connect on the left side. And along the bottom, there's a home button cable that runs along the bottom. So as you chip away at the screen, you want to be careful. Again, lower right, and then the top if you've got an LTE version. Okay, it's heated up, and now we're going to start removing the screen carefully. We use a very thin metal spudger for this. Very flexible, so it doesn't damage the framing. And we just slowly start chipping pieces away. Okay, we're going to speed this up a little bit as we go through here so that we don't take forever on this video. But again, we go very carefully. We check to make sure we're not tearing any cables. You don't want to stick the spudger in too far, because if you do, you can damage the LCD. Since it's hot, the adhesive comes off fairly easily for us. So you can see we're coming in here. We're being careful as we get down to the lower right hand side to make sure that we're not damaging that home button cable. The flex cable actually runs up right along the base of the LCD, so you can go in kind of far, but you want to be careful. Same thing up top here. You have 2 LTE antennas that you don't want to tear. Unlike the iPad 2 and 3, they are not adhered to the screen, so there's no adhesive holding them on. So it's a little easier to get up underneath there. On the iPad 2 and 3, those LTE antennas were actually adhered to the screen. So we're going to go ahead and remove. As broken glass comes out, make sure and throw it away. We keep the blow off handy so that we don't get any shards of glass on the LCD itself. As you can see, this one was pretty broken, so we had to, chip off pieces of it. One of the things you want to make sure of with the iPad Air and the iPad Mini is that you get all the glass. The screen actually sits down in a groove, and if there's any pieces of glass in there, the screen won't sit completely flush, and the first time your customer presses on it, it's going to break the glass. So we're really careful here. We're lifting the screen up, and remember the cables are on the opposite side from the iPad 2, 3, and 4. So once we get it high enough up and detached enough, what we can do is we can actually lift the screen completely up to the right. So again, here we're going down along the home button, being careful not to go in too far. this last little bit here and we should be able to lift the screen. So let's see here. Lifting it up. Getting all that broken glass out of there. You want to be careful around the home button because you have to reuse it, and there's a frame around the home button itself. So it's not just a button, it's an actual framing system around the home button. So be really careful as you get close to it. Okay, this should be the last piece holding it on here, and we should be ready to lift. So again, we lift from the left to the right. We go slow and careful to make sure that we're not snagging anything. Let me get it open there. Okay, all the connectors are on the lower right hand side. We're done with the hot plate, so we're going to go ahead and move it out of the way and turn it off. Okay, so we've got the screen off. We're going to blow off any excess glass right now. And our next step is actually going to be to remove the LCD out of the device because all the connectors for the digitizer are underneath the LCD. There are 4 screws that are holding on the LCD, one in each corner. The top left corner screw is hidden. It's underneath just a little piece of tape that you got to fold back here. Let me just lift it up here and give you a closer look. So you can see the tape is just right there. So you just pull it back a little bit so you can unscrew it. We'll speed it up a little bit for the unscrewing. It's 4 screws. They are regular Phillips heads. You can use your 00 Phillips head screwdriver. Fold that tape back so it doesn't get on the LCD. Remove these other 3 screws. And then the LCD has a little bit of resistance. It's not like the iPad mini, which has a lot of tape. It just has a little bit of resistance. So here's where we use a guitar pick in the upper right to get a purchase on it, so that way we can fold it back towards us. Just be careful with the LCD. That's the most expensive part of the iPad. Try not to get any fingerprints on it. Okay, so we folded it back. And we're going to blow off a little bit more. Just make sure there's no shards of glass on it. So as we fold it back, what you're going to see is an EMI shield with 3 screws. The LCD flex cable is actually part of that EMI shield. So you don't remove the EMI shield. It actually pops off with the flex cable attached to it. It's a little concerning to folks, and it feels like it wants to bend, but you got to kind of just gently lift it up and it will release with the LCD cable. Go ahead and remove these 3 screws. Another note, make sure that you are using ESD safe devices or you're on a pad so you don't shock it. iPads, you don't really disconnect the battery when you work on them, and because of that you have the ability to shock the iPad and ruin it. So we always make sure that we're grounding ourselves against the actual iPad itself when we work on it. So there, we've removed the LCD cable. You can see it's attached to that EMI shield. We're going to put it aside. We don't need it for the moment. Make sure that, again, we've got it kind of cleaned off. So now, what you're looking at is where the digitizer and the home button cable attach to. And we have to remove all 3 of those cables. There's 2 digitizer cables and 1 home button cable. The home button cable is hidden underneath a piece of tape. So you can see that's the LCD, there's the 2 digitizers, and hang on, I'll show you in just a second here. Right here is where the home button is. So you got to carefully peel that piece of tape off, and it is a flex connector like the iPad 2 where you got to flip down a little tab. The tab flips from the top to the bottom. Go very careful, do not break it. And again, don't use any metal devices on it. So we use our fingernail or a plastic spudger or an ESD safe spudger, and we release the cable. The cable comes off, and now we're ready to pop off the 2 flex cables for the digitizer. We got 1 and 2, and once you do that, the digitizer is free. We got a little tape holding it here, but it'll pop off. There we go. So we're done with that. Do not throw it away. We have to salvage the home button from it. And that home button cable, there's the button, and then the cable runs across the base of the screen right there. It's a very thin cable. We use heat to remove it. Do not heat the cable directly. Heat from underneath. And you'll see that in a second. Okay, here's the device. You can see we just got some tape and some residue around the framing. So one of the things we do is we go to a flat spudger like this to scrape off any additional residue or glass. You got to get it all out of there. We'll use heat if we have parts that are particularly sticky. Be careful. Don't slip with the thing and nick any of the other cables. But you absolutely have to get this clean, because if you don't, the new screen will break when you put it in. So you can see here, we speeded it up a little bit, but we're getting rid of all the tape and gunk and any little bits of glass. Again, whatever you do, don't slip and nick the battery. So here it's kind of sticky and there's more glass, so we may heat this up a little bit here. You can use heat to help release it, just like you do on the iPad 2. Now we're getting that glass out of there. Use some blow off to kind of clean off the edges. Okay, so down here you have your Wi-Fi antennas. That's your SIM card tray. Then you've got your LCD. You've got some extra antenna cables down there. You come up to the top up here, the motherboard's along the right side. You have your rear camera, your front camera, and your cellular antennas. That's kind of the inside of the iPad, if you will. Okay, so next we have our screen, our new screen here, and we have our old screen. And what we need to grab from the old screen is the home button and the flex cable assembly for it. Again, heat from the bottom side, not from the top side. Heat just long enough to get it to where you can release that cable without tearing it. Okay, we take our spudger and we just carefully peel that cable back. We get to the point where the framing is for the home button, and it has adhesive on both sides of it holding it down. So since you heated it, it should come off fairly easily. Just go slow and careful. We're getting that spudger underneath that metal tab. And there comes so that's the actual flex with the receptacle for the button to push down on. Then you have the home button itself, and it is in a frame. It's unlike the other ones, which is just like a little home button with a piece of plastic. It actually has a frame that you don't want to release, that you don't want to leave behind or break. So you can see, we just kind of get in there with our fingernail or with a spudger. And you can see there's two little prongs on the home button, which is nice because it helps you center the flex cable on top of it. So you can see here we're getting the whole frame, and there's actually adhesive on the frame itself. You can see that it stayed with the old screen. You should have a little extra adhesive on hand to help things stick down. The adhesive that we actually use is the same adhesive that you use to repair Samsung Galaxy S3s. We find that pink adhesive is the best adhesive made, and you can see we actually cut it to fit our iPad screens. The stock adhesive that a lot of people use is just junk, and it ends up lifting after a little while. We like to repair our iPads so that our customers are happy. So we've got this home button and the new flex, and we're going to go ahead and lay that down. Let's get that home button in there. And again, make sure it's in there straight. Those two prongs will help you center everything. Now, on this flex, where the metal tabs were, that adhesive came off. So we're actually going to cut some new adhesive. You can see here, sorry it's a little blurry up close, but there and there we're going to cut 2 little square pieces of adhesive to go on there to hold that on the digitizer. Again, it's not like the iPad 2 where you can set that assembly into the actual iPad. This has to be stuck to the screen. If it's not, what will happen is it'll still work, but your home button will be sunk down in when you finish building it and it won't look right. That's a tip that a lot of people don't know. So we're going to go ahead and cut these 2 pieces of adhesive. Again, it's adhesive that we get. It's excess off a Samsung Galaxy S3 adhesive. You can probably buy it on eBay. So we're going to go ahead and lay these pieces right on here, get them nice and centered. There's one. One of the reasons we make these videos is to kind of show you the amount of work that we put into repairing your devices. Yakety Yak fixes over 5,000 devices a year, and we put a 90-day warranty on all of our repairs. So we're going to go ahead and peel the adhesive off here and get ready to lay this cable. And you really need to be careful when you lay this cable. You got to get that ribbon in exactly the right spot, otherwise it can cause your screen to bulge up and you can pinch the cable and actually tear it. Remember those 2 prongs? That'll help you set this piece. It'll go in exactly where you need it to go. Go ahead and align it. We set the 2 holes over those 2 prongs. Make sure that home button's straight. Okay, we go ahead and get that applied. And now there's a little piece of adhesive running along the base of the screen that we're going to peel off that cable will then end up sticking to. Go ahead and peel that off right there. There we go. And then you just carefully lay that cable down nice and straight. And since it was on the last screen, it wants to go in this position, so it's already got a memory. So there you go, you got it nice and straight. It's in. You check the home button to make sure it's got good action, that it clicks down okay, because it really sucks to build this whole thing up to find out that you messed it up after you've already adhered it down. That's why we check everything. So we're going to go ahead and put the digitizer, attach the digitizer. Zoom in a little bit here. So first is the home button. And that slides up in, and then we click that little tab back down. Make sure it's seated up in there nice and straight. It usually has a line at the base of it to help you line it up right. Okay, now for the digitizer cable. Oh, actually, I think we're going to put the tape on first. Yep. So here goes the tape to cover it back up. That just is kind of a safety valve for you. Now we're going to go ahead and use the digitizer cables. So as we fold them back, you're going to notice this little black piece of rubber. That's just a spacer. You can remove that. It's just there to keep it protected when in shipping. Go down and click down these 2. They'll actually make an audible click. That's how you know that they're in there. So once you do that, we're going to grab the LCD again. And it's really hard to film this because you kind of got to align it and click it on blind. So you can't really lift it up right. So you're going to, it's kind of going to be blocking when we do this, but you'll feel it. You can feel it click in once it's in there correctly. It's just getting the LCD. Here we go. Again, blow-off is your best friend. A word of caution about any of the cheap blow-offs. If you get a new can, if you squeeze down too hard, it's going to blow liquid nitrogen right onto your screen and cause a hot spot, and it can ruin your screen. So if you have a new can, make sure you prime it first by spraying it out to the side away from your screen. And then after you do that, just don't squeeze the trigger down all the way. Another tip from us. Okay, so he's actually attaching the cable right here. And again, unfortunately, it's really hard to see because we got to hold it at a certain angle to be able to do it. Once you get it aligned in and click down, it'll actually make an audible click. You can go ahead and screw in your screws. We'll speed it up here, I think. Make sure you replace these screws. A lot of people forget, and then if the iPad gets dropped, that EMI shield can pop off and your LCD will quit working. And again, anytime we're working with a screwdriver around these connectors, we're actually touching the iPad outside of it, so that way we're not causing any shocks. So we're going to go ahead and lay down the LCD screen. Try not to get any fingerprints on it, and it just kind of pushes back down into place. You have 4 screws again that you need to connect on it. Now, if this iPad had any bent corners, we would actually be using a pair of body pliers to bend out the corners to try and get the screen to sit in there flush. Luckily, this one didn't have any. The iPad Airs are actually a lot tougher than the iPad 2s on their corners, which is good. Okay, so we have it all together. We've made sure that the screen's sitting down. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull off the inside sheet protector. This will cause a lot of static. Make sure you're holding the iPad when you do this, because if you're not, you can actually shock the iPad and it won't light. Go ahead and pull this interior screen off. The reason we pull this off now is that we're going to check to make sure that there's no smudges or fingerprints on the screen when it was built, and to test it out. It's always best to test your screen, so we're going to go ahead and lay it down without the adhesive pulled, just to make sure that everything works on this screen so we don't have a bad one. Go ahead and turn it on. The best way to test this is to actually hold down one of the icons till the icons start to shake, and then you can actually move the icon around. And that way you can test for any dead spots in the screen. If you hit a dead spot, it'll actually release that icon. So you can see here, we just drag it all around to make sure that there's no dead spots anywhere where the icon would release on us. So check the home button to make sure it works. Make sure Wi-Fi is getting a signal. Make sure that our volume buttons still work, that our lock button works. And that we have sound. Double check that Wi-Fi. Okay. And now what we're ready to do is to seat the screen. I'll fold it back open here. Again, if you're worried about smudges, again, you can peel this outside screen protector off. Make sure you're holding the iPad when you do it, and just look. You should get, if you've got good lighting, you should get good reflection off the LCD and see if there's any fingerprints or smudges that you need to clean off. If you need to clean them, use a microfiber rag, preferably not one that's been around when you've got shards of glass. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to peel off all the adhesive and get ready to stick the screen down. If you do cut your own adhesive, make sure that you're careful in how you lay it. You don't want it to stick onto the digitizer so it can be seen. You also don't want it to hang over the edges because then the screen won't sit flush. We have to cut hundreds of these adhesives, so we're very used to it. Okay, one last shot with the blow off. Make sure you get all the hairs and fibers and shards of glass and anything else that could cause it to not look good when it's done. Now, when you go and lay the screen down, you're actually going to butt it up from the right side, because that's where the cables are. One more little shot of blow off here. We're going to go ahead and butt this screen down to make sure it's nice and even. And then we're going to just press it down into place. And with that, we've repaired an iPad Air. So we thank you for watching this video. We do these as more of an explanation to show customers what we do to their iPads. We don't encourage anyone to fix their own iPad. It is much more difficult if you haven't done it hundreds of times. And come see us at yaketupdfw.com or 817-399-1000. Thank you.